Spy Games Elevator Mission is a first-person shooter for the Nintendo Wii, and it was pretty negatively received when it first launched, which is totally understandable because this game is very low budget, has a simple concept, and the way it implements that concept is incredibly repetitive. And honestly, when I started up this game, I really didn't expect much, but I ended up having quite a bit of fun with it and was kind of pleasantly surprised by how well its concepts work with each other, with two of the key factors being in what makes this game fun, being the movement and navigation aspect of this game. So essentially the idea here is that you're a spy infiltrating a 50-floor building. Within this building there are 5 data discs you have to collect, which are typically held by mercenaries. And every time you play this game, the building itself has a randomized layout. However, it's probably something that you won't really notice that much because pretty much 99% of the game is a bunch of hallways full of doors. Enemies flood out of those doors, and each of those enemies are nearly identical beside what they have in terms of the amount of HP they have, as well as occasionally they have different types of bullets they shoot, but they're still just shooting a bullet straight at you, so it more or less is the same tactic for defeating every enemy. So what you're seeing on screen right now is basically the entire game. I think the best way you can put this title is that its mechanics are functional. Basically it works as a first-person shooter. You can shoot, you can strafe. There are 3 different guns with a pistol, machine gun, and shotgun. But there's really nothing to write home about in terms of the individual moments, in terms of the combat, as well as the controls or gameplay or anything like that. So what this game lacks in depth, it makes up by overwhelming the player. Basically, all those doors in the hallways I mentioned earlier can spawn enemies, and they'll spawn enemies both in front of you and behind you. So you can move clearly and kind of clear out the enemies in front of you to make sure you have like a safe passage. However, there is a timer to clear out each section of a building, basically in 10-floor intervals as you go down. So there are times where you'll have to rush through an environment without taking the time to like sit there and clear out the enemies. So the game becomes a lot about knowing when to like stay back and fight and clear a path before you move forward, and then also knowing when you need to run and try to just dodge gunfire as you move forward. However, it's not always just like a pure descent downward though. There are times that you have to go up and down to basically reach lower floors. So there are multiple elevators on each floor, and each of those elevators can connect to different numbers of floors or lead to different sections of the building that can lead to the next elevator that will let you ride down too. So a part of this game is also looking at the map and trying to scope out which elevators you'll need to take to continue your downward descent, essentially. It's kind of fun sitting there and like scoping it out. You do have to do a little bit of guesswork because the map isn't like super detailed, but because the environments are so simple, for the most part, it works out. So occasionally this navigation can also become a bit more complicated as well. It's not uncommon that when you get a certain number of floors down into a section, it will essentially give you a piece of intel that says, hey, the data disc is actually back in the previous section, so you have to go back up like 10 floors. And so it kind of tests your memory for you to remember like how you got down to where you are and what is the most efficient way to get back up and find that section that contains the data disk, essentially. And then you have to navigate back down as well. So it's a very time-intensive process. So you're always kind of like staring at that timer and trying to make sure you have plenty of time to actually complete that navigation. You can save anytime you're in the elevator. So if you want to make safety saves, and the game's not that strict on the timer, as long as you're moving forward at a reasonable pace, you'll likely make it through. But it does definitely add some stress or intensity to the navigation as you have that timer ticking down while you're trying to just like navigate through this environment as efficiently as possible. So what this ultimately amounts to is a game that is incredibly fast-paced, where you're always moving, and as you're moving, you have to really think about where you're navigating to and try to memorize what is essentially almost identical environments and figuring out what paths you need to take through it, and try to use the map to remember exactly how different parts of the building are connected, so you can either go back up or go back down. This game is a fairly short game. It's only about an hour long, so it feels kind of like arcadey in some sense, and it has like a score at the end that essentially gets applied to your run that says, you know, yeah, you got this many points. And so I think that's definitely the intention here. Although I will say that, you know, even though it's like an hour long, it is incredibly repetitive in that time frame. So it does feel maybe like a little long in the tooth. Maybe they could have shortened it down to a more arcade, you know, level experience in terms of time wise. But I don't think an hour is like way too long. I think it works well for what this game is trying to do overall. And while replayability is definitely in mind in terms of, you know, having you go through the building multiple times, the repetitive nature of the game I think makes that single playthrough plenty enough for you to get an idea of how this game feels and what makes this game kind of neat without really like, you know, overly investing in it. At least personally, you know, I'm not a big score attack person, so maybe as somebody else who would be more into like building a score for the game, they can say, you know, a bit differently. But for me, you know, that one playthrough was plenty. I think this game is worth a quick playthrough if you think the concept is interesting. But overall, I think most people can probably not really bother touching this one other than knowing that it exists and being like, yeah, Spy Games, that game is maybe not great, but it does have some ideas and it does do some of them well. So yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. OneControllerPort.com is the website. And if you like this video, please share it. I'd really appreciate it. I'm really terrible at advertising things, so I appreciate any kind of support you can give me in spreading the word. I previously have done videos on some other more like niche Wii shooters for the system, so I'll go ahead and link those at the end of the video here. That includes both the import game YY Combat as well as the Real Heroes Firefighters game for the Wii, which apparently is very popular. I was not super aware of that, but that is a very cool first-person shooter style game on the Wii.